I want to talk about the unit circle over here, especially how to derive it. I feel like when I was taught the unit circle, it was more just like, hey, here, memorize this, which is fine, I guess. But I think it's a little easier to recall aspects of the unit circle if you actually understand what's going on with it. Specifically, I'm talking about how to remember what all the sine, cosine stuff is of whatever angles. Like if I said to you, what's the sine of 4 pi over 3? You'd be able to figure it out as opposed to just having memorized that. But let's just go ahead and get started over here. It all begins with the classic 4 quadrants here of our circle. It's called the unit circle because the length of the radius is 1 unit, right? Now, the distance around the entire circle is 2 pi r. This angle here, we can call this 0. Now, it's also called 2 pi because all the way around the circle is the angle of 2 pi, or 360 degrees. We're talking more like radians at the moment, but what that means is each quadrant is like an angle of pi over 2. So that's why that's pi over 2. And then down here, we've gone another pi over 2. So this would be 2 pi over 2. We go down here, and we've gone a third pi over 2. Remember, pi over 2 is a 90-degree angle. In other words, a fourth of around the circle. So each time we go another fourth of the circle, we're going another pi over 2. So down here we've gone 3 pi over 2. Yeah? Over here we got 4 pi over 2. And so on. 5 pi over 2, 6 pi over 2, 7 pi over 2, 8 pi over 2, 9 pi over 2, 10 pi over 2. It goes around and around and around. Now, we don't usually express it like 2 pi over 2 and 4 pi over 2, right? Of course not. These are reduced. 2 pi over 2 is just equivalent to pi. 4 pi over 2 is just equivalent to 2 pi. So, you see where I'm going with this for now? Now we can further subdivide the circle. Imagine we are now going to cut each quadrant in half. Now, if we're cutting a quadrant in half, what that means is we have now divided the circle into eighths. So, once again, we know going all around the circle is 2 pi. An eighth of 2 pi would be pi over 4. Or we could just start with the fact that one full quadrant of a circle is pi over 2, and a half of that would be pi over 4. So pi over 4, we go up here, that's another pi over 4, 2 pi over 4, 3 pi over 4, 4 pi over 4, 5 pi over 4, 6 pi over 4, 7 pi over 4, 8 pi over 4. You see how this has been done? Now, of course, there's a lot of reducing to be done. For example, over here, 4 pi over 4 is, of course, just pi. We know that. 2 pi over 4 is pi over 2, and so on. 6 pi over 4 down here is 3 pi over 2. 8 pi over 4 is 2 pi. But Seeing it in this way, I think, really can help not memorize, the opposite of that, help us derive which angle is where. 7 pi over 4 is down here because that's us going the distance of 7 pi over 4s around the circle. Now, that's one way we can subdivide the unit circle. But what we can also do, instead of cutting each quadrant in half, we can cut each quadrant into thirds. So, if one quadrant is pi over 2, a third of that would be pi over 6. So, pi over 6, 2 pi over 6, 3 pi over 6, 4 pi over 6, 5 pi over 6, 6 pi over 6, 7 pi over 6, 8 pi over 6, 9 pi over 6, 10 pi over 6, and 11 pi over 6. You see what's going on here? Now, once again, there's reducing that can be done, right? Like 3 pi over 6, of course, reduces to pi over 2. 6 pi over 6, of course, reduces to pi. 2 pi over 6 reduces to pi over 3. Right? 8 pi over 6 reduces to 4 pi over 3. And so on. Right? So what this is this is just a way of deriving which angles are where in the unit circle. And it also works for degrees. Same concept. You could just start with remembering how to derive this using the radians and then just translate those radians into degrees, or same concept. We know that all the way around the circle is 360 degrees. So each fourth of the circle is 90. 90. Another 90 gets us 180. Another 90 gets us 270. Another 90 gets us 360. And so on. And if you cut each of those quadrants in half, well, half of 90 is 45 degrees. So this would be 45. Up here is adding 45 to 45 gets you 90. Adding 45 to 90 gets you 135. And so on. Adding 45 to 135 gets you 180. And so on, right? And just like before, we can also slice each quadrant into thirds. So a third of 90 is 30. So each time we go a third of a quadrant, we're going another 30 degrees. 30, 60, 90, 120, 150, 180, and so on. So that's just sort of a way of remembering which angle is which in the unit circle. I think you can derive that pretty well.